Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our October 13th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. Lesson 280. We're reading out of the original edition. The hush of heaven holds my heart today. The hush of heaven holds my heart today. So the ones of you that are having difficulty reaching joy and having an optimistic, pleasant day, waking with joy like we were to do this morning. And maybe you can at least fall into that feeling of quiet, of that all things are secure, that you're held by God. I'll get up here where you can see. You're held by God. The hush of heaven holds my heart today. What is the hush of heaven? That quietness that knows that all things are safe and that illusions are not real they're not real. They're illusions. Only reality is real. Only truth is true. Okay, well, let's take a look here at the lesson. The hush of heaven holds my heart today. Father, how still today. How quiet do all things fall in place. This is the day that has been chosen as the time in which I come to understand the lesson that there is no need that I do anything. Is today the day that you come to realize that everything that needs done is being done and that you don't need to do anything? Just let the hush of heaven hold your heart today. In you is every choice already made. In you has every conflict been resolved. In you is everything I hope to find already given me. Your peace is mine. My heart is quiet and my mind at rest. Your love is heaven, and your love is mine. Okay, so God's love, he's equating that is heaven. Isn't that a beautiful way to look at heaven? It's where God's love abounds, which is always and forever. The write-up says, the stillness of today will give us hope that we have found the way and traveled far along it to a wholly certain goal. Today we will not doubt the end which God himself has promised us. We trust in him and we trust in him and in ourself, who still is one with him. Not the ego self, but the self that never has left its creator, that's one with the creator. All right? Okay, let's take a look from the hush of heaven holds my heart today. Let's jump back and look at our text reading. And we are ready for paragraph 58. Let's start with 57, though. And while you're turning there, if you'd like, and you know, if you are just listening to these and getting what you need from it, that's great. That's wonderful. But I would encourage you, if you were trying to be selective and decide what things to spend time actually reading in the text or in the workbook for students, I would encourage you to reread the lesson itself quietly and, with your book. And I'd also encourage you to read the what is the Holy Spirit will be our today's reading. If you want to go back and read the text and get a good picture of it, well, there's further reading you can do. But if you're not really having a lot of extra time you can spend and you just can't justify spending a lot of time and you're kind of but you would like to do more than just listen, I would really encourage you to take the write-up that we're doing for 10 days and read it to yourself quietly and the lesson, but together. And read them slowly, even a little slower than what I'm reading them. I'm trying to read them a little bit slow, but in the effort of keeping our recording not too long, I'm going a lot faster than what probably needs to be. But some people get some people consider that fairly slow. So I'm trying to reach something that kind of helps you on the run, but you may want to slow it down a little more, and because that is one of the things that he said, to read it thoughtfully and slowly, and let it be kind of a meditation read. All right. So 57, and I guess before we go there, let me tell you about it. I've got these apples here, and yesterday I told you a bunch of nutrient values in potatoes, and I got to thinking, what I'd like to do is just, there's so many things that you could study about each plant, and I want to, we're coming into the fall and the winter. There's an abundance of these apples I just picked the other day from a friend who had a bunch in his yard, and he said, "Yeah, pick all you want. Help yourself." I just asked him if I could pick the ones up off the ground after the windstorm. He said, "Hey, pick everything you want. I've already picked all I can eat, all I want." So be alert for there's apple trees growing, and make a little effort to try to pick some fresh apples and peaches when they're in season. Of course, this time of year you won't find any peaches, but you will find apples and pears. Persimmons will come up here in the middle of winter. Isn't that amazing? Fruits. So look for your trees. Remember where they're at. Be like a good squirrel. Bury your nut, and then no matter where it go back, find it. Well, see your fruit trees. Remember where they're at, and then go back and visit them, and get to know the people that own the land, so that you can maybe pick a few extra for them, or pick them for them, and then maybe they'll give you a few. Anyway, these apples, I want to tell you about Malus domestica, which is the genus and species of apple. I don't know what variety, and this guy didn't know what variety these are, but I would like to show you something on them that you should be aware of. There is a little fungus that grows on cedar trees called the cedar apple rust. It completes its life cycle on the apple and the cedar. They both they'll make these little gooey looking balls that kind of hang down on the cedar tree, but they end up affecting the apple by making the complexion of the apple a little bit just not real red. See how it's kind of got some brown spots in it? That's likely from the cedar apple rust. Well, the thing beautiful about these apples, he didn't do anything to them, and they just produced abundantly. So it would have been a nice apple to know the variety. But you could plant the seed, and the seed would grow another apple. Now, it may be a better cultivar, and it may be a poorer one, but it'll be something similar. I've heard people say you can't plant an apple tree, it won't be true. Well, no, it will be true. It'll be true to an apple. It just won't be the same clone as what, and I'm going to tell you a few of these different clones that are very good for organic gardening. And that's what I wanted to go through is, basically, I want to start talking to you about some of the foods that we can eat, and what varieties would be best to plant here in the Ozarks and other places too. If you're not here in the Ozarks, a lot of the applications that I'm going to talk about would be applicable. There is a particular orchard in Afton, Virginia, Edible Landscaping. You can go to it, ediblelandscaping.com, and they've got, and I highly recommend it. The owner of the place, I've met him, wonderful man, Michael McConkley, and he has been, I think that orchard, or that he's got an orchard that he sells from his, that he gets a lot of his starts from. And I think he started in 1979, and he's always looking for the right plant that will do good without sprays and different kind of herbicides, fungicides, pesticides. So because he really encourages organic growing. So he talks about how out of all the thousands of different apple varieties, he's only found about a half dozen or so that he would really recommend you planting. And he encourages you to go for the kind of apples and fruits of any kind that are resistant to the problems that so many commercial orchards end up having, and having to make lots of sprays that are oftentimes bad for health, bad for the apple, bad for the environment. So anyway, he's got these on his website that he recommends as being ones that, and I'm not going to go over to the details of each of them right now, but I just wanted to let you know that there are some apples that actually will do pretty good even if you don't put sprays on them. And if any of you have eaten or grown apples, you'll know what I'm talking about when it can be a challenge to get a good apple. But anyway, here's some that he recommends. William Pride, Arkansas Black, and there's the Arkansas Black Spur Apple. There's the Pristine Apple, the Enterprise, the Centennial, the Stamen, Liberty, King David, Yates, and then there's a good all-round apple pollinator that he encourages, and you can get from him, called the Dalgo crab apple. And crab apples, they're a little bit more tart than a regular sweet good fresh apple. Even if they're fresh, but they have a little bite to them. They're not near as sweet, but they can pollinate your other apples. And this particular Dalgo crab apple flowers for a long period of time, so it two apple trees need to pollinate, but they both have to be in bloom at the same time. So you got to pick the right apples. And with any other fruits, if you're looking for a pollinator, you need to get ones that are both in bloom at the same time. All right. So those ones I just mentioned to you, and the ones I like around here are their Arkansas Blacks. The Liberties, I've seen those grow. They do well. But we're going to talk a lot about apples and peaches and just all kinds of fruits coming up for the probably good part of the rest of the winter. Plants are a little harder to find now that we're coming into fall. And rather than showing you plants, I'm just going to start showing you or talking to you, maybe not even show you the fruit. You all know what an apple looks like, but but I do want to start talking to you so you can start thinking about what kind of apples, what kind of peaches, what kind of nuts, what kind of vegetables, what kind of things would be good for me to plant for my garden. And so those are the kind of things I want to be talking about. Kind of a little garden planning, maybe food planning, what things are important to eat, what things are good to grow and share. All right. So today's the Malus Domestica. Okay, let's go take a look at paragraph 57. Remaining logical, but still insane, the ego resolves this completely insane dilemma in a completely insane way. And what was the completely insane dilemma? That the ego knows that its life is sustained by the mind, and that the mind, if it was aware, which it is, but it does the ego tries to keep the mind from being aware, that it could withhold its value to the ego, and as such the ego would die. So the ego, trying to keep itself alive, is trying to keep us from knowing that it is built its life on the concept of separation, where the mind only knows union. So that's the dilemma. Remaining logical but still insane, I like that, the ego resolves this completely insane dilemma in a completely insane way. It does not perceive its existence as threatened by projecting the threat onto you and perceiving your being as non-existent. It does not perceive its existence as threatened by projecting the threat onto you and perceiving your being as non-existent. This ensures its continuance if you side with it by guaranteeing that you will not know your own safety. Tries to keep conflict going. The ego cannot afford to know anything. Knowledge is total, and the ego does not believe in totality. This unbelief is its origin. And while the ego does not love you, it is faithful to its own antecedents, begetting as it was begotten. 58. Mind always reproduces as it was produced. Produced by fear, the ego reproduces fear. This is its allegiance, and this allegiance makes it treacherous to love, because you are love. Love is your power, which the ego must deny. It must also deny everything which this power gives you, because it gives you everything. No one who has everything wants the ego. Its own maker, then, does not want it. Rejection is therefore the only decision which the ego could possibly encounter. If the mind which made it knew itself, and if it recognized any part of the sonship, it would know itself. 59. The ego therefore opposes all appreciation, all recognition, all sane perception, and all knowledge. It perceives their threat as total because it senses the fact that all commitments the mind makes are total. Forced, therefore, to detach itself from you who are mind, it is willing to attach itself to anything else. But there is nothing else. It does not follow that the mind cannot make illusions, but it does follow that if it makes illusions, it will believe in them, because that is how it made them. 60. The Holy Spirit undoes illusions without attacking them merely because He cannot perceive them at all. They therefore do not exist for Him. The Holy Spirit undoes illusions without attacking them merely because He cannot perceive them at all. How can we start operating that way? Seeing the whole work the way the Holy Spirit does in our interpersonal relationships. And let me read it again. The Holy Spirit undoes illusions without attacking them merely because He cannot perceive them at all. They therefore do not exist for Him. Remember, it's a fiction anyway. He resolves the apparent conflict which they engender by perceiving conflict as meaningless. We said before that the Holy Spirit perceives the conflict exactly as it is, and it is meaningless. The Holy Spirit does not want you to understand conflict. Wow, listen to that. The Holy Spirit does not want you to understand conflict. He wants you to realize that because conflict is meaningless, it cannot be understood. How many times in my past, years ago, before I understood this, did I try to figure out why people were doing what they were doing? And you know what? Sometimes you just got to step back and say, well, if it's not true, if it's not according to Spirit, it's an illusion anyway, and it's not real no matter how much energy someone puts into it. It's still an illusion. It's still a fiction. And we need to start using that as one of our ways to problem solve. He wants you to realize that because conflict is meaningless, it cannot be understood. We've already said that understanding brings appreciation, and appreciation brings love. Nothing else can be understood, because nothing else is real, and therefore nothing else has meaning. If you will keep in mind what the Holy Spirit offers you, you cannot be vigilant for anything but God and His kingdom. The only reason you find this difficult is because you think there is something else. Belief does not require vigilance unless it is conflicted. If it is, there are conflicting components within it which have engendered a state of war, and vigilance therefore has become essential. Vigilance has no place at all in peace. It is necessary against beliefs which are not true, and would never have been called upon by the Holy Spirit if you had not believed the untrue. You cannot deny this. When you believe something, You have made it true for you. 62, last paragraph we'll read today. When you believe what God does not know, your thought seems to contradict His, and this makes it appear as if you are attacking Him. We have repeatedly emphasized that the ego does believe it can attack God and tries to persuade you that you have done this. If the mind cannot attack and the ego proceeds perfectly logically to the position that you cannot be mind. If the mind cannot attack, the ego proceeds perfectly logically to the position that you cannot be mind. By not seeing you as you are, it can see itself as it wants to be. Aware of its weakness, the ego wants your allegiance, but not as you really are. The ego therefore wants to engage your mind in its own delusional system, because otherwise the light of your understanding would dispel it. That's why the ego doesn't want us to know about its source, which is mind, because if you did realize that you were making all this fiction illusion that was causing you so much difficulty and causing the whole world difficulty, you'd withdraw your support in it. And that's what we want to start doing more and more. Okay, let's go take a look at the reading under The Hush of Heaven Holds My Heart today, which is, what is the Holy Spirit? The Holy Spirit mediates between illusions and the truth, as He must bridge the gap between reality and dreams. Perception leads to knowledge through the grace that God has given Him, to be His gift to everyone who turns to Him for truth. Across the bridge that He provides are dreams all carried to the truth, to be dispelled before the light of knowledge. There are sights and sounds forever laid aside, and where they were perceived before, forgiveness has made possible perception's tranquil end. The goal the Holy Spirit's teaching sets is just this end of dreams. For sights and sounds must be translated from the witnesses of fear to those of love. And when this is entirely accomplished, learning has achieved the only goal it has in truth. For learning as the Holy Spirit guides it to the outcome He perceives for it, becomes the means to go beyond itself, to be replaced by the eternal truth. If you but knew how much your Father yearns to have you recognize your sinlessness, you would not let His voice appeal in vain, nor turn away from His replacement for the fearful images and dreams you made. The Holy Spirit understands the means you made, by which you would attain what is forever unattainable, and if you offer them to Him, He will employ the means you made for exile to restore your mind to where it truly is at home. From knowledge, where He has been placed by God, the Holy Spirit calls to you to let forgiveness rest upon your dreams and be restored to sanity and peace of mind. Without forgiveness will your dreams remain to terrify you, and the memory of all your Father's love will not return to signify the end of dreams has come. Accept your Father's gift. It is a call from love to love that it be but itself. The Holy Spirit is His gift by which the quietness of heaven is restored to God's beloved Son. Would you refuse to take the function of completing God when all He wills is that you be complete? I like that when He says, the Holy Spirit is His gift by which the quietness of heaven is restored to God's beloved Son. Well, that was kind of what our lesson today is. 286, the hush of heaven, the quiet of heaven, holds my heart today. Be sure to find that hush of heaven in your heart, and don't respond to ego words, whether they're coming from your own mind or from another's. Learn to look beyond them at the eternal truth. The hush of heaven holds your heart today. The prayer says, Father, how still today? How quiet do all things fall in place? This is the day that has been chosen as the time in which I come to understand the lesson that there is no need that I do anything. In you is every choice already made. In you has every conflict been resolved. In you is everything I hope to find already given me. Your peace is mine. My heart is quiet and my mind at rest. Your love is heaven, and your love is mine. The stillness of today will give us hope that we have found the way and traveled far along it to a wholly certain goal. Today we will not doubt the end which God Himself has promised us. We trust in Him and in ourself, who still is one with Him. The hush of heaven holds my heart today. The hush of heaven holds my heart today.